Hello, welcome back to Mining Network. I'm joined with Renee Barty, the CEO of Jourdan Resources. Renee, good to see you.
Hi, Peter. Nice to be here.
Kick things off, very brief company overview.
So Jourdan is a lithium company based in Quebec near Val d'Or. It's 16,000 hectares of land, which is the largest lithium land position in Quebec. It surrounds the Sayona mine, which recently went into production. So Sayona is Canada's only lithium producing mine at the moment. So we have 16,000 hectares, which is three sort of land positions encompassing all that area.
Brilliant. And before we go into it, capital structure as well.
So we have about 320 million shares out. Jourdan's been around for over 20 years. It's a very proud legacy Quebec-based company. But the good news is I can sort of say that, I know where half those shares sort of sit. So I'd say there's the public float probably about 150 million shares right now.
Good. Okay. Right. So this is a fairly novel approach to expediting production, really, from what I understand. So
Yeah.
obviously you hold these licenses around an existing producer with an existing mill. Can you talk us through a little bit about the partnership, the JV that you've just signed, and really what the overall game plan here is? Because it's, like I said, it's a bit different to your usual explore, create studies, and build something yourself.
Well, we get to super bypass a lot of those things that are usually in the way, and we're very fortunate. So when the mine was there, when the Chinese had it, we still owned all this land. The mine went bankrupt about 2 years ago, and we just sort of sat and waited. Everyone was coming in to bid on it because lithium had started doing the prices. And we finally saw that a group called Sayona came in from Australia. They bought it for 150 million. They raised another 200 million to refurbish it and put it into production. As soon as they sort of planted on the ground, we went over and introduced ourselves and said, look, you're here and we're 16,000 hectares around you. My name is Renee. His name is Brett. Very cordial relationship right away. Now we have a joint venture with them on just one of our properties. So we have three main properties, but the one that's exactly east of their pit in their mine is called Valet. So we did a joint venture with them for them to earn up to 50% for $10 million in two chunks. So the first one is for 25% for 4 million, which is already done.
Yeah.
So that 4 million is actually going into a 20,000 meter drill program starting next week in Quebec. So that's run by a joint committee between Sayona and us. We make decisions where the drill goes. So that's already underway. And then the second 6 million will be used to further exploration Valet. We think if you go a little bit further east and down on our property, we think that's where the mineralization gets higher grade and thicker. So that's probably where we use that second tranche as well. So it's a very great joint venture on top of just the JV for drilling. Brett Lynch, who's their CEO, has joined our board of directors.
Oh, good.
He's made a personal investment, and so we're true partners in almost every sense of the word.
So true partners in every sense. So how do you see this moving forward? Obviously, so they've earned in to explore the licenses, essentially prove up the amount of spodumene in the ground.
Yeah.
You're successful, hopefully, and then you're essentially feeding through your material through their existing mill. Is that the game plan?
That would be the game plan. The game plan for us is to use the money that they've given us to prove up a resource. We think we can get that done by the fall.
Okay.
Move quickly to a feasibility, and then take our rock and supply it along with theirs. They have their own, and bring whatever is the excess capacity. So their mill is right now set to do 6,000 tons per day. I think they can get to 4,000 to 4,200 tons per day comfortably with their own rock.
Okay.
So that excess, be it 1,800 to 2,000 tons a day, would come from our side. And that would just go right from our side over. It's right next door. We're very fortunate that we don't need a mining permit. We've looked into this because we can piggyback off theirs because it's an open pit essentially. It's same rock, same mineralization, going to the same place. So that saves all the time of getting a mining permit, which everyone knows is very laborious. So that gets that out of the way. So we're hoping, to your point, sometime early next year, we could move from explorer to developer to producer.
Okay, so if they've got a capacity of 6,000 tons per day, they're already matching around 4,000 at the moment. So 2,000 could potentially come from your site.
That's what we're hoping. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You want the mill running at full capacity, ideally, right?
Yeah.
So that would be what we make up some of the ore that they wouldn't have.
And by that point, you'd imagine that your partners would own 50% of the license or your license.
Yes. By then they would probably own half of our land. They actually have a clause in there that they can move from 50 to 51% once they get us into a feasibility study. Okay. So they would then move over to 51%. Okay. Just of the one property. I mean, we do have three properties.
Yep.
This one is actually the second largest, but we have a much larger one that's more grassroots, and then we have one called Bayarger to the south, which is just south of their mine, and that one looks like it's going to be higher grade, higher widths, and that one has a 20,000 meter drill program starting as soon as the snow melts in June.
How do you go about? And I've always wondered this, and it might be a silly question, but say for example, so they've got say a lower grade material going through their for their proportion of the 4,000 that they're putting in,
Yeah.
and you find a higher grade core or
Yeah.
higher grade area, and you're putting 2,000 in.
Yeah.
How do you then, if you're pulling both feeds through the same, how do you then determine the value of their feedstock and your feedstock and pay out appropriately?
Yeah, it's a very good question, one we're working through right
Okay.
now, because you're right. I don't think, to be honest with you, the problem's going to come up first, because the first chunk we're using is literally on trend with our open pit. So we've already done 12,000 meters of drilling. It's all pretty much the same thing. When we do start to dip south and to the east, where like it could go from, so 1.1 to 1.7, 1.8%, which is a big difference in lithium.
Yeah.
The widths could go to 10 meters. I think at that point we have to make an adjustment to what's going in, not just in terms of tonnage, but then in quality, right? So those adjustments are going to have to be made. So if our 2,000 tons is a higher grade, then obviously there's going to be some higher performance rate on the other side.
Yeah.
And those metrics have to be worked out. But right now, we're in the position where all the grades are pretty much going to be very normalized, at least for the first while.
Okay. I guess what is there a risk where obviously if they get to a position where they own 51% of the license, you lose visibility on what they're doing at the plant and sort of what's happening in terms of the grade that's going in? And
well, it's a good question, but I would say that I'm not too concerned about it, just because the dynamic of the relationship is so strong.
Okay.
I forgot to mention that Sayona owns 9.9% of us, and it's in their best interest to see us succeed. So they wouldn't do anything, I don't think, that would not have us succeed inherently if they wanted to, drill left or right.
yeah,
They're only doing it to get better product in their mill, which is going to win for us anyway.
I guess as well, they've obviously only got one license. You've got others, and
Yeah.
if they want access to those, it needs to be a partnership in kind, doesn't it?
Of course. And of the 16,000 hectares, that one piece of land is 7,000 hectares. That leaves a lot of other land. While we're going there with Sayona and the Valet part, this Bayarge property to the south, we're doing our own drill campaign. So we want to do that for a big reason, which is to show that we're a standalone company. If we can pull up a resource in a second area that has no attachment to Sayona, we hopefully will say, hey, they'll go, wow, these guys have another deposit down here. It's actually probably higher grade. Maybe we should think about buying into that one as well. And certainly they would have the first right of any refusal. They're fantastic partners. So if we do make a discovery somewhere, we'd say, hey guys, we got this. Do you want to start running this through your mill as well?
Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
What other players are around you? Are there any other lithium deposits or any other people potentially building mills? Because obviously it's good that you've got a really strong partner, that it seems that the relationship is very good there.
Yeah.
But obviously it's never a bad idea to have other options, right? Do you see there becoming more players in this region? Could there be another mill in the future that you could leverage?
I think there's a lot of discussions of other mills in the future. The only problem is building a mill is a long process. So, I mean, these guys have at least 2 to 3 year head start, in my opinion. There's other people that have good assets, critical minerals, and a few others have solid resource bases. And I'm certain that they're planning on building a mill, but building a mill is not an easy, cheap, or a quick process. So, they have a massive head start, and they have lots of plans. Sayona has plans to do, to build a hydroxide plant. They're thinking full term, ahead of term. Their CEO Brett is very, very clever, and he's always thinking 2 steps ahead. So I don't see us having to go to another mill, but do I see another mill coming at some point in Quebec or Ontario? Certainly. Just I don't think it'll be in the next few years. That's
what about I assume the mill that Brett and his team have permitted is only permitted for 6,000. Is there any room for that to expand in the future, do you think? Is it?
I don't know. I know that it was originally planned for 4 and they expanded it already to 6.
Okay.
So I don't know if they can expand it further. So I don't have an answer to that question at this time. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to take a step back and look at the geology and the grade. So at the moment, you have done some reconnaissance and some drilling already. You've got an understanding the mineralization sort of flows through from one license into your own. So could you just remind us of that? It's obviously spodumene, so it's high grade, but could you just give us a bit of an overview of the geology and the actual grade of the resource?
Yeah, so I mean, you'll see with the open pit and what they're actually putting through the mine now is anywhere between 1 to 1.2%. I mean, you see some of these results say they have 2% spodumene, and certainly those will have some of those hits as well.
Yep.
But I would say the grade honestly is about between 1 and 1.2%. It's kind of a little narrow veiny structures. So it's not huge thick widths. That's why they have things like ore sorters. They have 2 ore sorters on site to really make sure that their dilution isn't too bad.
Is that by color?
Yeah, I think it's by color, and they have the state-of-the-art one, which does all kinds of new things. It's not AI, but it's pretty close. So it can recognize, because even by color, some of the green stuff that looks like waste is not waste. It's actually could be very high grade. And so the pink, the green, and the white, you got to really know what you're doing. But they've got 2 on site now, and So I think technology is going to be a big player in terms of, sorting all that stuff out. But certainly when it comes to the geology, it's 1 to 1.3%. I think their average on their feasibility was 1.2% was their head grade. Their cutoff, I think, is 0.6 to get through the mill. And obviously the higher grade, the better. So but it's in that grade right now. And ours is our 12,000 meters sort of indicated the same thing, 1 to 1.2, sort of in that 2 to 5 meter category, if you want to call it that. But we do think it gets thicker and higher when we go south on the same section.
Good. I do, to be honest, I do really like the model in terms of they're essentially spending the 10 million, and I'm assuming that 10 million will sort of see you through in terms of most of your costs to a production and actual cash flow, right? So, so that obviously you just completed not too long ago a 3 million raise.
Yeah.
Is that what was the reasoning behind that? Is that just G&A and keep yourselves covered until you are in cash flow?
So most of that, honestly, Peter, was going to go towards the drill program at Jourdan, which is the other program. We really want to get us a resource outside of Vale. Just selfishly want to have our own resource.
Yep.
And we want to actually signal to our partners that, hey, you know what, there's more going on down here than just this way. Look down this way. I mean, who knows where things go? If we discover something up here, they might say, hey, look, these guys have X amount of resource now. It's worth maybe talking about some sort of takeover or whatever. I don't know. But we want to prove ourselves on our own 2 feet. So that's where that money's going. We're going to put a $2 million drill program together in Jourdan.
Good. Okay. So you'd diversify really your value there.
The company's well cashed up. I mean, we had several million in the bank before this financing. So we really did it just to drill in other areas.
So all being well, you should in theory still have a bit of cash in the bank, or quite a bit of cash in the bank, before you enter production or as you enter production, and then obviously you'll be making your own cash flow.
That's right.
And you can then start looking at expanding even further, right?
Yeah. And hopefully, hopefully the prices hold up at 3,000 or 4,000 a ton, and the profits, the margins are very good.
Yeah, just run us through. So ideal timeline between now and when you think production might be, and sort of what activity will be going on in between.
Well, if all things come together, which they never do, we would get a resource. We do this 20,000 meter drill campaign. We have very good lab because we use the same lab as Sayona, so they get preferential treatment just how big they are. So we would say sort of fall, establish a resource, whatever that resource would be, move quickly to a feasibility, let's say end of year, January, maybe Q2 next year be into production.
Brilliant.
That's kind of ideally what would happen.
Good. Okay, Rene, thank you for your time.
No, thank you very much.
Cheers.